Hello, gentlemen, and in particular, ladies. I couldn't have done that in a less sexy way. Welcome to Day 9 Daily number 536, where we learn to be a better gamer. And again, oh, I got a special treat. Oh, shh.
Hey guys, welcome to the Day 9 Daily. It's time to do some cracking. Shh, 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 shh. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. That's our part 2 for the day. I'm gonna put it down.
And the chat is upset. Good. Sean, there's a crackle in your mic. Yeah, that's mine. Good. I noticed that if I actually sort of hold my mouth open when I do it, my tongue goes like, and so you get the and the crack at the same time, and it freaks out children. I always do it in line at Disneyland. Let's talk a little bit about what we learned in part number 1. We saw very standard play from GanZi, and a standard but often difficult to deal with play from Protoss. A Protoss player who goes for a lot of upgrades and the nice rounded out tech, speed lots, archons, colossus, all that jazz. And we saw that GanZi did a couple of really, really tiny adjustments at the start to do some pretty drastic changes. Things like getting those early upgrades up. In this game, we're going to see GanZi get cheesed. He's going to open up fairly standardly again, and we're going to see that standard is not a script that we must follow if we want to succeed. Rather, it is a nice framework, a nice skeletal structure, and we can put all the meat and fat on it as we see fit. This analogy is excellent. I should just say it's a nice skeletal frame, because I'm assuming that you know what a skeleton is. In the top left, we have GanZi. Let's do the same thing that we did last time, shall we? Oh, yes. Last time, what we did is we did a nice little happy time review of what GanZi did, just so we get a sense again of what Sean means by standard. Well, we're not seeing a command center first. Maybe we could, but standard largely is getting an early base, getting some Marines to defend ourselves with. GanZi, for the purposes of education, no doubt, does a slight variation, getting these early extra barracks up. Last game, we saw him get the third command center up very quickly, and we said things like that he was the king of testicles. And I say that not because he is literally, but because you'll remember better that way. Has anyone ever called, I don't know, Pythagoras the king of testicles? I mean, a squared plus b squared equals c squared is pretty damn easy to remember. But Pythagoras? King of brass? Down below? No, you'd never forget that. That'd be the best math lesson ever. And that's why I want this to be the best TvP lesson ever. A squared plus b squared equals gg squared. Very often, when people see different build orders like this, it's easy to think in terms of the specific thing it fixes, you know? Like, I'm going to build a missile turret really fast so I won't lose to air. Or, hey, if we get our barracks earlier, we don't lose to a 4-gate rush. All these, like, really specific circumstances. But I still want you to look at this and go, that's pretty standard play. 3 barracks, 3 command centers, getting the medevacs up. Standard. Standard. Ah, delicious liquid. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and ignore what he's seen down here. But yeah, we see GanZi. He's getting his factory up. And by the way, his name is actually pronounced GanZi, for any of you who are being like, oh my god, it's a Z and Day 9 doesn't know. Oh no. What are we seeing here? A much later engineering bay. Interesting. It's different than what we saw last game. And of course, we're seeing the biggest difference of all, which is a huge damn-ass all-in. In a moment, we, would ordinarily see a 3rd command center go down and that sort of thing. But the question is, GanZi is doing things quite a bit differently in this game compared to the last game. And yet, any commentator or player would look at what GanZi's doing and call it standard. So what we want to do is we want to rewind back to the 4-minute mark and we want to look at some clues. I don't need to review SaSe's build because he expands, and then he builds 7 gateways and he attacks. Protoss builds work like that. They are low on sentence necessity. So, looking at the GanZi cam. Looking at the GanZi cam, he's clearly not scouting. He is clearly not going to scout a lot. So we're not actually getting that same opportunity. In fact, this was a pre-planned maneuver from GanZi. Just going straight for the 3 barracks. Nothing wrong with that. But we see, again, look at these nice little adjustments that we're seeing out of GanZi. GanZi's scouting all the way around this way with this SCV. And is getting a little bit aggressive with these first Marines to try to get a sense of what units he's up against. This is a pretty nice, clear, crystal clear set of what you're up against. I mean, seeing the second Stalker is oftentimes something that can make you a little wary of some early pressure because you're like, where the hell is the sentry? So, appropriately, look at this. GanZi just has a Marine patrolling here. There's warp-in tactics that can deal with this. You know, like players who will go for a 4-gate and then move 1 Stalker up, down here, and then they'll start warping in Stalkers right there, and then it forces this to lift. So what we're seeing out of GanZi is he's almost looked at this map and been like, alright, I'm going to play standard. What do I need to worry about? Okay, I need to worry about annoying warp-in tactics here. I need to worry about the fact that this is really wide open. I need to worry about him running up here. So this is probably where I want to build my first supply depot. Are you starting to see how we're avoiding autopilot here? We're thinking about what are all the tools that we can do to solve problems. This is the clearest problem solution. Problem, warp-ins down here. Solution, patrol, and build a depot there. We're not changing our build order per se. We're not doing drastically new, psycho, crazy stuff. We're just tweaking it a little bit, adjusting it for the map. Now, I totally whiffed this because I'm awful at my job, so I'm going to back up a sec. Here comes GanZi, getting ready to scout on up. A very nice, calm, not alarming force of units. These are home. I want to emphasize how important a time this is. 6 minutes is right around the time that early warp gate pressure starts to pop up. If we got here and we saw nothing at the front of his base, I would probably instantly go build a bunker before I got into his base. Ta-da! Very simple. But I see stuff, so I'm not worried about building a second bunker. I'm more content to just have supply depots at the front. So, GanZi is then going to do some more standard stuffs. Building this second barracks. Oh, look at that, or the second bunker. Notice that this is not a rush to build a second bunker. This is just a, I am somewhat in the dark. And I want to show that that coordinates with the scan a little bit. There it is, the scan. And upon seeing the scan, we see some gateways here. And this is a very clear, I'm not really sure what's going on. This sucks. This could be a player just building some extra gateways as a precautionary measure. This could be a player building extra gateways to do a 7-gate all-in. Now, it's so easy to be in that zone where there's 2 possibilities, and then to say, well, I guess I have to do something standard. Right? This is this gross word, standard, that keeps popping up that, you know, I think, again, gets a bad rap. But you still have to make sure that you are addressing for both of those possibilities. It's not to do some crappy middle-of-the-road solution that you think will be decent against both but not great versus the other. But in reality, what's going on is you say, okay, I'm scanning. He could be doing some sort of big attack. So we'll get a second bunker. If he's not doing a big attack and he's playing defensively, then I'm actually going to go for an aggressive early push. Most people have seen my mullet. I hate it more than anything. I want to kill it. Captain Day 9, is this not the most hideous profile you've ever seen in your life? I was in the middle of making a point, and then all of a sudden someone in chat was like, oh my god, is that a mullet? And someone's like, Jesus, it is. Someone beat it with a stick. And you should. If I were here, you could get a cudgel, perhaps. If you played some of those old school RPGs for, like, you know, DOS, MS-DOS, then you know what a cudgel is. What are we talking about? I'm going to make an important point now that I have your attention with mullet. In this circumstance, we see bing, following information. The first intuitive step is, yeah, I'm going to build a bunker because he could be doing an attack. Here's the following slightly less obvious, but still completely intuitive answer that we're going to see out of GanZi. He is going to go for as fast a factory as he could. Why? Because, again, he's either trying to attack us, which this covers, or he is doing some defensive play. So we want to hit this defensive player really early with medevacs. You know what would be a wrong choice? A wrong choice would be throwing down 2 engineering bays right now. Does that make sense? Because, again, in that last game that we saw, scouted, and clearly the opponent is going for ultra-long game, or long-term play. In this one, we don't know if he's going for double forge, super turtling thing. We know that he could just be going for something like defensive gateways plus robotech, and be wanting to use Colossus to secure himself some sort of expansion, and that sort of dilly-hoo-ha. So this is a nice way to account for both of these possibilities. Actually, we see literally not a single... Oh, another thing to emphasize, we haven't seen the Robo facility doing much. So if he's going for some sort of very defensive Twilight Council play, this works really excellently against it. Very, very excellently. So we see one of the last little pieces to add on. Oh, look at that. Going for the aggro, getting these 2 add-ons before even considering adding on an engineering bay. Frickin' rad, baby. So we did a little bit of logic up to this point to find out where we were. Yeah, cool, there's the engineering bay. Again, there's some key times. Remember in the last game where I was talking about, oh yeah, we've seen our opponent do nothing up to the 10-minute mark, so that makes us comfortable. Here we're starting to see some action go on at the 8-minute mark, so we're kind of going, Look, GanZi just saw those two dudes. Oh, now sees a sentry. Now it's starting to go into oh shit mode. This is a very nice, juicy early starport. We're going to get our little medivacs out at around 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Very late, +1 compared to last game. Still, it's the same look. Marine Marauder medevac. 3 barracks and an early expand. But now all this shenaniganry comes up, and boy are our medevacs a needed commodity. Now, this is where I'm going to pause. By and large, when you have a player like SaSe who executes an attack, or if you have someone who's at SaSe's level executing this sort of all-in, it's damn hard to hold off. It's real freaking hard to hold off. We even have this scouting factory attempting to do some poking and prodding along here, trying to see what's up. Notice, at this point in time, I want to do a little exercise. Let's say you lost to this, and you think, if I had a 3rd bunker, I'd be able to hold it off. But I don't want to build a 3rd bunker if I'm unsure that he's doing this all in. You could just take this factory and scout with it. You could build your factory here, build the add-on, lift it, and then float it right out here. And by that period of time, I'll actually be pulling back. This factory could have given us a little bit of forewarning. Or you can say something like, at 9 minutes, I'm going to send a worker out and try to get a good scout on what's going on outside my base. Or at 8:30, I'm going to do that. The solution is not to just arbitrarily build a 3rd bunker, it's to do more checks. So this is where I want to slice our analysis up a little bit. We've seen the first half of GanZi just getting a little bit of information, not quite clear. My opponent's either trying to attack me, so I want to get at my early second bunker, or he's getting kind of defensive, so let me just go for very fast medevacs and take some control. Seems good. At this point, GanZi's going to get totally boned. But we're going to also see again how he's using this framework to his advantage. To very narrowly, or very, very nearly pull a nice comeback. Now, in general, if you are up against a player who has this many gateway units, you know that he's probably devoted himself to building a lot of gateways. And yeah, maybe your factory can spot that. So, you know that he is behind on Robo. He doesn't have Immortals or Colossus, let alone Observers. He also does not have Templar or Blink or Charge. So first and foremost, we want to try to stay alive. Obviously, the analysis that I will be providing in this circumstance is try to have good control, pull miracles with workers, etc., etc., etc. A lot of times, Terran just dies right here. Very often Terran dies. GanZi manages to barely stay alive, and hilariously, is ahead on army supply. Awesome. So, we certainly have to make some kind of magic happen with our units. This scouting factory is a nice little tool for us, just giving us a little bit of extra additional information. And I like the fact that GanZi does these sorts of tactics that, by and large, you can't really afford to do so much anymore. Doing this sort of drop play, where your entire army is going to be committed to these drops, is ill-advised. A player who's going for a big Colossus play can do something like Stalkers, and then just go kill your main base. Or, in particular, a player who has Observers and can see exactly where these medevacs are at any given point in time. But GanZi, of course, knows that the opponent does not have that edge. There was a little bit of skirmishing up here with a warp-in thingy. But you still know for quite a long time that the opponent is really not going to be doing anything at all. GanZi pulls back, clears himself up, gets some defense, just to make sure his orbital command's up. I would say that this is probably one of the most uncomfortable feelings in the game. When you do a little bit of this poking, you try to do some damage, and thus far you've been largely battered down because you've lost 49 workers. To still have that comfort to come all the way back home. A lot of it also lined up nicely with the medevac shield upgrade. And this is the sort of like counter-response thing that looks like an act of desperation, but actually is pretty dang effective. Now, I want to briefly think about why all this stuff has... I want to talk about why GanZi has done this little order to do the medevac drops. We saw a little bit of why the medevac drops work so well. There's no blink, there's not a lot of Colossus, and Colossus are great at dealing with drops because they can go up and down the cliffs and shoot all that sort of thing. You know, the Colossus. So we did a little drop play and that sort of thing, and now we're just kind of going all in with this. It's pretty easy after this push is done, right here, and we're starting to move out, to be pretty confident in what your opponent is going to actually be capable of. Generally, for another 3-4 minutes, he will not really be powered up on some other form of tech if you're putting on pressure. So GanZi just regroups and applies pressure, and what do you know? Meanwhile, back home, we have this robo facility with not yet a Colossus out. We have some DTs up, which is, you know, annoying, because SaSe's the man, and he's going to be doing that. But, hilariously enough, this snapback works extremely nicely. If your opponent went for some sort of 6 or 7 gate attack at 10 minutes and it failed, and you just shoved it back with ease, you can do a really nice little bit of harassment and then follow up with a big push about 3 or 4 minutes later. And GanZi only loses because he doesn't have detection. Oh yeah. Isn't that pretty neat? Again, this is kind of an extreme example. All the SCVs got in the way, but the way I would say it is with the standard adjustment is that if someone sacrifices all their tech to try to put on a whole bunch of pressure on us, we're first going to poke him in ways that exploits his lack of tech. And then we just do a timing attack before his tech kicks in a high gear. So this could be the case, let's say it was a Protoss player against a Zerg, and let's say we're Zerg. The Protoss player throws a whole bunch of gateway units at us. Ugh, it's very terrifying and scary. We can do things like, what are ways that exploit lack of Protoss tech? Mutalisks, really easy, intuitive thing to do because he's definitely does not have Robo or Twilight started. He'll probably be starting those right away. And you can just poke around at him a little bit, and he has to commit gateway units back to doing the same sort of defense as before. Mass speedlinging works... I'm trying to think through that. Picked an example at random that I hadn't thought all the way through. What would be other ways to exploit? Other ways to exploit... to exploit a Protoss there? Get burrow and expand twice. Like, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that you can just do like that because he either is going to build a whole bunch of gateway units and try to attack and then not have detection and your burrow wins, or he is going to go for a robo facility, not build any gateway units, and you got 2 more expansions. So, I mean, that sort of thing is good. I'm just going to end part 2. My brain is, I'm like talking a million miles an hour, and then I'm like, no, I was done. No, I was done stopping. But either way, we got to see in part 2 some pretty, from a 5-mile view, we would still say GanZi's playing standard. But when we zoom in, we look really specifically, we're going, we're seeing barracks get built earlier just as a choice, but then factory really early, and then 2 add-ons on the barracks really early, and then the last of all is that +1 upgrade. Pretty sweet. We come back to part 3, we're going to see GanZi be up against another totally weird, wild, crazy strategy from SaSe, and we're going to see how he uses his standard play to adjust for it. Yeah!